Welcome back to the Football League Paper podcast. My name is Matt Badcock. I'm joined by editor John Lyons and chief writer Chris Dunlavy. Chaps, how are we?
All good, thank you.
Yeah, all good, Ballers.
Good. Feeling the temperatures starting to pick up a little bit. We're getting to that part of the year now. We're into March. Starting to the permutations are in full flow. Let's start with the Championship last night. Monday night, Derby County beating Portsmouth 1-0. Chris, I'll come to you first. That race for the playoffs, the top six in the Championship, is certainly interesting, isn't it? Who's going to get in there and get that last spot? So obviously Southampton had that great win against Coventry at the weekend. Wrexham beating Hull. It's interesting. Probably between those four teams, you reckon?
Yeah, I reckon that's between. Well, it's difficult to say, isn't it? Because the Championship's like you sort of a week from now.
Say so, and then regret the game later.
And somebody a bit down below them has won 2 games in a row, and all of a sudden, they've lost 2, and there's a point between them. But it's just generally the form. I would say none of. Derby have been in decent form. Southampton look fairly unstoppable. Wrexham keep winning. There's only really Hull who've having a bit of an iffy patch. So I'd say, you look at it now with the games running out, are any of those 4 teams going to lose enough games to let anybody else back into it? Would be my sort of argument about it. I don't think Southampton are. I mean, Southampton are absolutely steaming. And yeah, Derby last night. It's a funny one. I think Derby are a club who've gone a little bit under the radar this season, largely because they've sort of constantly hovered around mid-table. They've never been in trouble. They've never sort of particularly been they've been in the top 6 for days at a time. But actually, when you look at the team, and maybe they should be there. I know John Eustace last week was sort of saying how they've overachieved to be where they are, and they've already kind of their season's already a success no matter what happens. But I was looking at the team, and you look at the likes of Smodics, who's a league winner. You look at Ben Brereton and Diaz, Ryan Brewster. They've got Patrick Adjumang as well, who's been linked with Premier League moves this week. You look at the front end of the pitch particularly, and it's probably as good as most teams in the league, really. So it's not a massive surprise to see them there. Is the rest of the team good enough to see it out? I don't know, but they've definitely got the tools.
John, Chris obviously saying there about Southampton looking unstoppable, and sort of as we speak now, 3 points outside. Obviously, that great win against Coventry at the weekend. But they the kind of the one, we've talked about them quite a few times, haven't we? The probably underachieved at the start of the season and had everything that was kind of going on, but we always sort of felt that the squad, would be kind of up there. Is that now where they're rolling, and you're probably, if you're in there, you're probably thinking, "Oh, wouldn't really fancy having to play Southampton in the playoffs."
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little bit of a case of how long they can keep that momentum going, because they've been very streaky this season, haven't they? It's been a sort of either sort of highs or real lows. So possibly they've got that FA Cup quarter-final coming up against Arsenal as well. I think that's over the Easter weekend, isn't it? So they'll need to probably rearrange a couple of games there. So they're going to have quite a hectic schedule. Obviously, we talked about before about them losing Adam Armstrong to Wolves as well. So I know Chris has spoken a bit before about, obviously, Ross Stewart is a crucial player for Southampton, and obviously they've almost got to wrap him in cotton wool to make sure he doesn't pick up any more injuries, because he could be sort of pivotal for them as well. So they're in good shape at the moment, but obviously they've got a lot on their plate. They've got a pretty decent squad, but one or two injuries to key men, and who knows how it could go. So they've still got to they've got to work hard, and they've got to try and keep that momentum going and keep the pressure on, obviously, on Wrexham and Hull in the positions at the moment.
I do think, as you say, Southampton, the thing with Southampton that makes them a bit vulnerable, I think, if they lose, I do think, Ross Stewart, they haven't really got another out-and-out centre forward, and Leo Scienza as well. I mean, you look at him and sort of the creativity he brings. I think I would argue he's been one of the best players in the Championship this season. Scienza, I think he's been absolutely quality in terms of, his end product's not always there, but he makes things happen. He creates a lot of chances, and I think I think you take one of those two out of the team, and it's a different Southampton team, and kind of a lot of the old problems come back. So I think that they are very much a team who are vulnerable to a few injuries. But if they can keep everybody fit, then equally one of the best squads on paper in the league.
Yeah, I think one of those rearranged games is the Ipswich one, isn't it? That they've got obviously at home, and they're playing that in the penultimate game of the season, in the final week of the season. Now that one's being rearranged into. So they obviously got Derby as well, and Wrexham to kind of come. Arsenal, Wrexham that Easter weekend. So that's sort of that Easter period. So yeah, it is obviously shape, getting to that point now. But John, they've got to take a lot of confidence from beating Coventry. They're only the second side to win there. Obviously Ipswich did earlier in this, not all that long ago, but to go to Coventry and get the 3 points is not to be sniffed at.
Yeah, I mean that was a phenomenal result, and obviously they'd had that cup win at Fulham the week before, so obviously they wanted to try and keep that momentum going and obviously build on that great result, and obviously the buzz of then getting that Arsenal draw in the quarterfinals as well. So Coventry away, it doesn't really get much harder in the Championship than that. And obviously I think Coventry had won 6 on the trot, hadn't they, before that? So yeah, phenomenal result. Go there and get the win there and keep the momentum going. And they're buzzing at the moment. Obviously, as we said, it's just how much they can keep that run going now.
I think if I had to pick two, I think I'd probably go Wrexham and Southampton at this point, as would be my pick for the 5th and 6th. Because I think with Wrexham, what you can't overlook, because there's a lot of players in that team and a manager who, I mean, when you talk about sort of getting the job done and seeing things through the end of the season, they've been doing it for 3 years now. Like they've literally sort of had pressure games every single week, every fixture. They've been battling for positions, and so they're not going to. I just can't see that team being affected by that at all, which I think is sort of a massive bonus for them. So yeah, I think they'll keep winning. I think Southampton will keep winning, and that'll probably sort it out. But I
could be wrong. We'll see. But obviously you got the automatics as well. Is interesting, isn't it? With Ipswich now, that game in hand, as we speak now, would go ahead of Middlesbrough if they were to win that. But Millwall again, not going away, absolutely flying. It's fascinating. Let's have a little look at the bottom of the table, though. Obviously, we know Sheffield Wednesday's fate has been sealed. We wouldn't have thought, I know we have kind of discussed and talked about them quite a few times on here. We've talked about the points deduction, but to have to see Leicester City second bottom, John, is no one would have predicted that at the start of the season, even with the sort of potential points deduction that was coming.
Yeah, and I think we all thought obviously that Leicester still had the squad to be a big hitter in the division. I thought Marty Cifuentes was going to go in there and do a good job, from having sort of seen what he'd done at sort of QPR before. I thought maybe it was going to be a good opportunity for him, but obviously it didn't sort of pan out that way, and the form's really tailed off terribly. And strangely enough, I suppose funny enough, they did play QPR's Cifuentes' old team at the weekend, and when Leicester took the lead in that game with that really good goal from Jordan James, you sort of thought, well, you would have thought QPR were there for their taking after their recent results. So to lose that game sort of 3-1, and Gary Rowett sort of complaining about the gifts that his team had given QPR, that must have been a crushing setback to their morale. So it's going to be interesting to see how they respond to that. Obviously, we've always got that. I suppose the elephant in the room is this kind of like this 6-point deduction that they've got at the moment, which they've appealed against. So that leaves everything a bit up in the air, not only for themselves, but for everyone else down there. And I think you've got to give a lot of credit to Oxford recently with Matt Bloomfield. I think it's 10 points from 4 games that they've had, and they've had a real turnaround there, and probably shaken a few of the clubs up above them as well, because they probably thought maybe Oxford were goners as well. So yeah, all to play for.
Yeah, it could have been, I suppose, from Leicester's point of view, worse with Chris, with obviously Charlton getting a late equaliser against Oxford. But, credit to them, like you say, they've given themselves that position. Like John says, they've given themselves that chance to get out of that position, haven't they? But, West Brom going and beating Hull as well, it's kind of, the results have been, not great for Leicester as well at the same time.
No, well, I think the thing is with Leicester, what you've got to, even if you put the points back on, they're still in a relegation battle, which I think is kind of an indictment of what they have done this season. Really, it's not good enough for the players they've got, and there should be, even if they weren't challenging for promotion, there's no way a squad of that caliber should be in a relegation battle. So I think kind of everybody needs to have a bit of a look at themselves there. And I think you look. What's really worrying for Leicester is, just as you've just said, if Oxford have hit form, they look really confident. You've got, West Brom have got a first win, and you wonder if that, again, they're another one who've got, the squad's not Leicester, but they're a good team, and they've got the quality to get out of it. So you do wonder if the confidence turns, whether they'll go away. And then you're looking at, if you're Leicester, you're thinking, well, who takes our place? Who are we going to beat? And I mean, I guess the thing I would say is that I know Millwall 2-1 at the weekend, and 2 late goals against 10 men. But if you look at Blackburn's running, it is absolutely horrible. I mean, it is by far the worst sort of everybody they've got. I'm just looking at it now. They've got Middlesbrough away, they've got Coventry at home, they've got Sheffield United away, they've got Southampton away, and then in between all that, they play Leicester and West Brom, so they've got 2 of their direct rivals. They've got Birmingham away as well. I mean, that's, as lists go, I mean, that's about as bad as it gets, really. Mm-hmm. So I think there's no, there for me, and I wrote this in my column last week, of all the teams I've watched this season, I would say they look the weakest, and I would still plump on them taking one of the places. After that, it's anyone's guess, really. But yeah, I mean, you've got to be worried if you're Leicester, because there's just they just don't seem to be able to find any kind of groove or confidence. Or you watch them one week and they're okay. I watched them up at Middlesbrough a little while ago, and they were the better team for spells. And then you just watch them another game, it's on Saturday, and they just fall to pieces. And there's just nothing. There doesn't seem to be any kind of spirit or cohesion or any of the sort of things you need in a relegation battle. And that would be my big worry for Leicester. I do think it's going to be very, very tight for them.
Yeah, John, like Chris is saying there, West Brom beating Hull in that 3-0, that first win of the of 2026. I don't know if I said earlier about Wrexham beating Hull. I sort of get my W's muddled up, but a slip of the tongue there. But yeah, West Brom, great win for them. But same with Blackburn. These are the ones you've got to build on. It doesn't kind of, if you're talking about being streaky and going on streaks, now's the time to do it when you're down at the bottom.
Yeah, well, I think when Leicester won sort of last midweek against Bristol City, you thought that might be their sort of turning point. And obviously then they had the QPR game. QPR had sort of taken a couple of hammerings recently. Leicester take the lead and sort of ended up sort of blowing it there. So yeah, so you can never quite tell. But I think certainly for West Brom, with all the problems they've had, the managerial change with Ryan Mason, Eric Ramsey, not sort of working out. Now they've got James Morrison there, and you see that win at the weekend. You do get a feeling that that will give them a massive shot in the arm. So you'd fancy them, as they have got good players. So with a little bit of confidence, there's no reason why they couldn't sort of string 1 or 2 results together. Perhaps a team that have got to be a little bit fearful is probably Portsmouth, because they looked as though they were a little bit away from it a while ago. They'd had some good results, and then it's just they've had some sort of crucial games where they've sort of conceded late goals and what have you. I know we had a bit from John Mousinho at the weekend, sort of kind of lamenting the fact that they'd sort of put in some decent performances in games and not taken points. And obviously they've lost against Derby as well. So they've got to just be a little bit careful, because they've unfortunately been sort of drawn sort of back into it now.
Yeah, Chris, this is the time of year as well where kind of when things are going against you, it can be kind of, I think a bit like golfers, isn't it? You play a bad shot, you got to forget about it and go on to the next one. But those are the things that can kind of sort of start bringing you down a little bit when you feel like everything's against you and others around you are winning and all that kind of stuff. And suddenly the game's running out. You can almost like slip in there without realizing.
Well, yeah, and that's what I've always said about the bigger clubs down there. I definitely think that is much more of a key. If you're Leicester's players, that's very much your attitude, isn't it? You're thinking, I shouldn't be here. This is not where we were expected to be. All those thoughts are, they're going around your head, and you're wondering why it's happening. You don't really know why it's happening. Whereas if you're in Oxford, you've expected to be down there all season, and you're just battling away and doing what you've done all season long. So I do think the psychology of it plays a massive part. And yeah, it's just how much you can just kind of focus on it. And like I said, I think fixtures are massive as well. If you're playing a lot, if you've got a few games, all you need at this time of the year is a few games against teams with nothing to play for. And it can make a massive difference. I mean, I look at it because Oxford have got West Brom have got Sheff Wed on the last day of the season. Oxford have got Sheffield Wednesday to play, and you don't want to say those are gimmies because Sheffield Wednesday have got a few results, but you want them on your fixture list, decent, don't you?
Yeah, that's Tommy. As a Sheffield Wednesday fan, don't want anybody on our fixture list at the minute. Let's look at the red side of Sheffield, talking about sort of teams with nothing to play for. And Chris Wilder, kind of had a little bit of a dig back. People have been sort of kind of accusing them of being on the beach.
Yeah, I don't entirely know where this has come from. I don't know if it's supporters or news. It certainly isn't me. But there's been some kind of dig or perceived criticism, and he kind of came out after the match and said that he's been offended by the criticism. The players don't deserve it, that they're not on the beach, that they're given everything. But Chris is a wily character, and I strongly suspect a little bit of that was sort of to a bit of a siege mentality and to try and give his players a lift, and one of those things you pin on the wall and say, look what's been said about us, sort of thing. I suspect it was a bit of psychology. Guy Branston, I once wrote many years ago now, a long time ago, when Torquay were in League Two, I wrote something similar about Torquay. Not that they were on the beach, more that they looked shattered after a long season, and the race was probably run. And Guy did that. Guy cut it out and stuck it on the dressing room wall and sort of showed everyone what I'd been saying. So yeah, that managers do it. But I think it was possibly also, they'd had another player sent off, hadn't they? So I can't remember, I think that might be 5 in 2026 or 4 in 2026. They've had a lot of players sent off since the turn of the year. And whether it was, just to create a different news story to maybe head off the questions about discipline and red cards and all that sort of stuff. So my strong suspicion is it's not to be taken particularly seriously. I think it's maybe a bit of canny management. Media management.
Old school media, a bit of old school media management. Do you know what we saw in that game against Birmingham, that really bizarre Jack Robertson handball as well, which led to a penalty? It was, people have seen it, obviously kind of didn't realise. I guess he thought that it'd gone out for a goal kick or what happened, but he's obviously put his hand on the ball, rolled it into the 6-yard box. I think James Beale always sort of kind of thought, I think but it was in goal for Birmingham, and he sort of kind of just like rolled it to him. They tried to carry on. The referee's obviously sort of probably one of those things thinking, have I just seen him handball that? I can't really quite believe it. Give him the penalty, which has then been saved. But yeah, a bit of a bizarre one.
Yeah, it certainly was, and certainly egg on face there. And I suppose the fortunate thing was that the penalty was saved, wasn't it? So. At least it didn't cost them a goal, but yeah, it was quite bizarre. And I think we've seen it once or twice before, haven't we? Wasn't it Tyrone Mings did that in Europe for
he did.
For Villa? Was that earlier this season?
I think it was this season.
So, or was it? Yeah, I'm not sure. But so it's funny how these things happen. But yeah, it's just a complete sort of loss of concentration, and I suppose you could kind of sort of say it's partly because of the new style of football that we play. Everyone's playing out from the back now, and so obviously goalies are just dropping it down for defenders to take it out the 6-yard box. Whereas back in the day, everyone had to be outside the penalty area, and you had to boot it outside the penalty area, didn't you? Really. So so it's horses for courses a little bit there, but I think everyone will be saying, just make sure you keep your eyes peeled on where the ball's gone.
Yeah. It's horrible though. I can imagine being, because we've all been there on football pitches when you've done something stupid like that, and like you see everyone, you hear the commotion, and you see everyone running towards you, and you're thinking, oh no, what have I done?
I remember playing once and sort of shepherding the ball out for a corner, thinking of shepherding out for a goal kick, sort of like, getting my body really wide and shepherding it out, and everyone go, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it came off this time." It's sort of like a lot going on. There's a lot going on when you're on the pitch. Us sort of elite athletes, like myself, playing at such a high level. You see, it's
The funny thing was, I don't think the referee noticed that. If you watch,
you wouldn't expect to see it, would you?
The referee's looking at him, and then he sees him do it, and he kind of turns away. And it's the player, it's the Sheffield United players who realise and draws attention to it. I think if there's not a reaction, he probably gets away with it.
Yeah. There was one of those in the women's, I think it was Women's World Cup a couple of years ago, where sort of like the players sort of accidentally sort of kind of caught it kind of thing and then dropped it down, and it just all, I think it just played on. Yeah. There
was a one in a Bayern Munich game as well, wasn't it? Arsenal against Bayern Munich, where there was something similar happened in that, where someone it was very similar to the Robinson incident, but I think the referee didn't give it for some reason. But anyway, one of the funniest things as well was, I don't know if you watched the highlights, but the commentator sort of said that the Birmingham will feel like justice was done, and I was like, what? You missed the penalty. I was like, you just picked the ball up.
Justice for Jack. It wasn't the only sort of bizarre yellow card of the weekend. Obviously, with Ollie Norburn at Notts County, it resulted in a red card because it was his second yellow. But kind of had that little run in with Amanda Dobber at Chesterfield, didn't he? And then Dobber's boot came off, and Norburn kind of just helpfully. Maybe he's trying to give it back to him. He just missed and threw it off the pitch, but basically off the pitch. But John, that was another weird one as well, wasn't it? To player throwing a boot away.
Yeah, it certainly was. So we had two sort of kind of bizarre incidents on Saturday, and obviously what made it worse was that was his second yellow. It was still early. It was early in the game as well, wasn't it? So unfortunately, obviously he got that second card, and so it really did sort of cost them dear. And obviously Notts County went on to lose that game at Chesterfield. So obviously we'll never know what would have happened otherwise. But it was a big game for both teams. So how bizarre was that? And I think maybe probably a few managers this week sort of saying, don't chuck anyone else's boots around.
I wonder what the official offence is. Like, what did he do? Like, unsportsmanlike conduct, or what was it he did?
Maybe it is just throwing opponents' equipment away.
Yeah.
I've seen David Beckham get booked for England for trapping. His boot had come off, and then someone played him a ball, and he sort of passed it off, and the referee just stopped the game and booked him for it because he didn't have his boot. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
bizarre.
Very strange. I remember I think it was up at St James's Park when England were playing up at Newcastle. Very strange, but a bit of an interesting one. When he did it, he thought, I sort of do regret that now. The referee's blowing his whistle and he's coming over to me, because probably left him with no choice. Let's stay in. Why don't we stay in League Two while we're there with that? Like you say, that Chesterfield, winning that game against Notts County, but let's kind of keep. We've talked about the players, how interesting they are. Obviously, the top three fly-ins, Bromley, Cambridge, MK Dons all winning. Great win, Chris, for Walsall. Kind of they needed that. Obviously, they've slipped out of where they were for sort of pretty much the first half of the season. Darren Byfield in as sort of interim there, and getting a great 3-0 win at Crewe after Matt Sadler's departure.
Yeah, it's your classic new manager bounce, isn't it? But, I suppose if he's not a particularly new manager, because he was there with Matt, so it's a one of those, isn't it? It was probably always coming at some time or another. And maybe they did just need a different voice, a change of face. But I remember somebody. I mean, Darren Byfield. You don't know how much he's been doing behind the scenes and how much of the good work he's done. But I do remember a few years ago, I can't remember who was speaking. I spoke to a few people about Darren Byfield, and they all said he was, absolutely top. I think he'd been at Arsenal maybe.
He's had some non-league roles, managerial roles. He had a couple of clubs in non-league.
Yeah, but just everyone said he was a great coach and to watch out for him in the years to come. And then I think he sort of took a job at Crawley, didn't he? Which was a bit of a poison chalice at the time. And then sort of went back into coaching. But yeah, I know he's a very highly rated manager, and they're not out of it, are they? They're still in with a chance. I think it was more the direction of travel that got Matt Sadler sacked. So they're well in with a chance.
I sort of imagine sometimes you're a manager who's lost your job, and I don't know what you kind of do on that Saturday, but maybe sort of go out for a walk while the game's on, and then probably go later on, sort of have a little look and see what the score is, and you think, oh, I think, cheers everybody. But yeah. A difficult one for him, John. Obviously,
something else noticeable just from that game was the performance of Albert Adoma, because he looked as though he was about 18 again there, and he was absolutely flying, and he got a couple of goals, didn't he? And he just looked as though he was outstanding, and he hasn't. I don't think he's been playing that much either, so maybe that's why he's maybe a little bit fresher. But certainly, if he can turn in a few more performances like that, then also we'll be flying.
Chris can tell his Africa Cup of Nations Albert Adoma story again.
No, it was a World Cup.
Yeah, so World Cup.
Yeah, I'll find a photo one day of his T-shirt. His mum had got made up, but I'll dig it out and show it at some point. But yeah, great bloke, Albert.
Like you say, they're not out of it. It's tight for getting in there as we speak, trying to get into that seventh spot and all the way up. Obviously, as I say, the top three, they kind of pulled away a little bit at the weekend, didn't they, Chris? Just with that, with those results, fell. Obviously, Salford kind of come right back into it, but there's just that little hint of a gap now. Yeah,
well, you've got to. I mean, you look at Bromley now, and you think, well, what's the gap? 9 points.
As we speak.
I mean, yeah, given how solid they are, and given how infrequently they lose, I mean, you've got to. I mean, you'd be amazed if Bromley didn't see the job through now, especially with 3 places to play for. Because I know Salford have, like you say, have sort of hit a bit of form and come back into it. But other than them, everybody sort of from 4th downwards, the form's so patchy, and nobody's stringing results together week on week. Them MK Dons, really, I'd say you can probably safely say it's done and dusted for them. And I would almost say Cambridge as well, just purely on form, because none of those 3 sides really look like losing games at the moment, whereas everybody else does.
Yeah, well, Cambridge don't concede many goals, which is apparently quite a good habit to have in football, because if you don't concede goals, you don't lose many games. But they've got he's conceded 28 as we speak now, far the lowest in the division. Obviously, that 5-0 win against Gillingham as well. There's obviously games to come this week, isn't there? But I think I saw 28
must be the lowest in any division, surely, I would assume.
Yeah, I thought so. Kind of out going through, but yeah, unbelievable. Good players to have in your EFL fantasy team, like I did last week. I think maybe you did as well, Chris. Actually,
although I've normally got a Cambridge goalkeeper or defender in there somewhere.
Get him in there, get those clean sheet bonuses. Let's look down at the dreaded drop zone. Barrow into the relegation zone off their draw with Accrington. Newport obviously beating Barnet, which pushed them out of it. We talked not that long ago about Dino Marmaria going in at Barrow, John, and he's no longer there.
I mean, quite incredible. I mean, with Barrow's sort of managerial sort of turnarounds this season, because I thought when Paul Gallagher left after he'd only had 5 games in charge, we thought that was a wee bit strange, and then they brought in Dino Marmaria to replace him, and poor old Dino's only had 6 games, so it's been quite bizarre there. He must be sort of bitterly disappointed, but I just suppose it just goes to show how desperate clubs are to stay in the EFL. That if you're not convinced that person's going to do it, then clubs will be ruthless and make that decision regardless of how long the manager's been in the building. So yeah, terrible sort of blow for him to obviously have been waiting to get that EFL chance and to only have half a dozen games. And obviously Barrow, they drew, didn't they, with Accrington at the weekend with 0-0 there. So at least they picked up a point. But as I say, they have drifted into the relegation zone. And I think you've got to give a lot of credit to Christian Fuchs at Newport. That was a great result for them to go at Barnet. I think some people wondered when Christian Fuchs went in there at Newport how long he'd be in charge and whether he could really. Obviously, we know from his Leicester days how much he knew about League Two, and would he be able to go in there and sort of turn things around at Newport? And I think there was some tough results early days, but their form has picked up. And they've had one or two really good wins. They beat Salford as well, didn't they, fairly recently? So so some promising signs for them, and it's turned into a real battle down the bottom. I think we've got 4 teams there within about 4 points of each other. It does look at the moment as though it'd be possibly 2 from 4 there.
So obviously lots of big games this midweek, which will no doubt shake everything up again. But I think Chris B probably he spoke to Adam Virgo. He kind of always talks about 3 managers in a season is a pretty bad sign, let alone going onto a 4th as they are. But they've got a game in hand. That's the thing. You always hold on to. Going to be very interesting to say. Lots of midweek games that will no doubt change things. Let's go back up the ladder to League One. Cardiff getting that big win against Exeter. Great win for them to kind of get back on the horse. Lincoln obviously still absolutely incredible story. Got one of the stories of the season, surely, Lincoln. But interesting up at that top. Do you kind of think Lincoln can start maybe 15 points now as we speak? Start at least looking around the local area for the halls that they're going to book out for their parties.
Yeah, for the and for the booking the trips to Tottenham next season.
That's the new chant. I've seen that. That's the new chant that lots of people are singing, aren't they? We're off to Tottenham. You're off to York. Is the sort of the new fashionable chant among many League One fan base.
But yeah, I mean, they definitely don't know whether Tottenham will keep up their end of the bargain, but Lincoln are definitely going up on the because 15 points at this stage of the season, and when you haven't lost since November, I mean, no one's catching them they're gone. And especially, I've said it loads of times before, with the experienced players they've got, they're not going to flap that, no chance. So yeah, they're gone. I mean, Cardiff are gone as well, aren't they? I know they've had a couple of defeats recently, but one of those was to Lincoln. Then they go and win. I just don't. I think those two can pretty much start planning for life back in the Championship. Lincoln, I mean, it's probably going to happen quite imminently, isn't it? It's only going to take a couple of wins for them and a couple of defeats below them, and they're probably going to be up in the next probably fortnight. Well, after the international break, so a fortnight after that, 3 weeks, I would have thought they'll be up.
Yeah, you got that busy Easter weekend sort of coming, can't you? But sort of lots of things seem to start happening over Easter weekends. But yeah, incredible story, really. Incredible story.
Yeah. I mean,
the whole thing going back years when they obviously dropping out of the Football League, and then how they sort of kind of come back is,
Well, I was just looking at it because I've written my column about Lincoln this week, and I was just looking, and literally, so last weekend, the sort of 10-year anniversary, 10 years prior to that, they went to Dover and got beat 4-1 in front of 743 people. So that's how far they've come.
Dover were a good side back then, though, to be fair.
You know what? They went 4th. Dover went 4th after that game.
Yeah, like Ricky Miller powered Dover, would have thought back then. Yeah. I'm sure it's Carl Shorten they lost to in the FA Trophy, Lincoln, and that's kind of a lot of the fans. That was kind of their real kind of reality check of what was.
Well, they lost. Their FA Trophy record is absolutely terrible. They lost to Carshalton. They lost to Bradford Park Avenue, and can't remember the other one. But
I remember they got to the semi-finals the year they went up and lost to York. I think that was the year York went down. Talking of York, yeah, York went down that year, but ended up winning the trophy. But yeah, they beat them in having been to the FA Cup quarterfinals and the FA Trophy semi-finals. They kind of eventually sort of ran out of a little bit. I think Danny Kelly's called them the Lincoln Lizards or something like that. Their trophy side. They sort of had two different teams to sort of balance because they're playing so many games with the FA Cup, the trophy, and the league. Yeah, they're sort of especially a trophy team. Yeah. Looks like they're, as you say, starting to plan some trips next year and where they might be off to. Obviously, well, let's talk a little bit about Exeter, John. While we're there, obviously that defeat, they've no win in 11 games. They've sort of tumbled down the table, 4 points above it as we speak now. So as I say, lots happening, but yeah, a tricky period for them. Obviously, there's lots of chat about the off-field sort of stuff as well. Yeah, tricky period for them at the minute.
Yeah, you got to feel a bit sorry for them because obviously it's a bit unfortunate for them to lose. Obviously, Gary Caldwell getting that chance to go back to his old club at Wigan, and he didn't feel as though he could sort of turn that one down. And obviously they've turned to Matt Taylor now, and coming up, they'd had obviously one or two or three results, but obviously they've come up against a top quality Cardiff team on Saturday. Ruben Colwell obviously got a couple of goals for Cardiff. He's obviously one of the classiest players in the division, and should certainly be back at Championship level next season. And Alex Robertson, what a wonderful goal that was as well in the top corner. So Cardiff have been them alongside Lincoln have obviously been a class apart in that division. So yeah, it'd have to be something sensational now for either of those two clubs not to go up. So I think we can safely say they'll be there next season. As for Exeter, yeah, they could just do with a result from somewhere now, even if it's a scrappy sort of 1-0 win, just sort of grind out a result. Because yeah, obviously we've said before, obviously the momentum's huge, and obviously they've got sort of some negative momentum at the moment. They just need a bit of a boost, but Matt Taylor's an experienced manager, and I'm sure he'll be fully confident that he'll get them out of trouble.
Yeah, is momentum the key word this time of year, Chris? Look at Stevenage finding a bit of form. You're right at this right sort of time to get back into that top six over the weekend, didn't they? Up to fifth. It's tight. The sort of the automatic promotion race might not be tight, and obviously Bolton and Bradford kind of look like they're well set in there. But the race for the other two spots in those League One playoffs are certainly interesting.
Well, yeah, that's it, and it's like the battle nobody wants to win, that League One playoff race, isn't it? So, and I think that's kind of what Stevenage back into it, because you would have looked at Stevenage a couple of months ago and they'd had such an awful winter, they couldn't buy a win over the winter, and they looked like they were only kind of heading down and down and down, and then they've managed to sort of stop getting so many draws. They've managed to get a lot of wins, and yeah, it's just everybody around that sort of 5th to sort of 10th. Sort of place really is everybody. You look at Stockport; they've lost 3 in a row. Reading haven't won in 2 after a great run. Huddersfield had that sort of iffy run after a great start under Liam Manning, and nobody's really sort of putting a run together there. So again, it's one of those where it's anybody's. And yes, Stevenage have just sort of ticked the wins off in the way that nobody else has, and kind of got back. And that's the first time they've been in the sort of promotion shake-up all year in 2026, first time since December, I think. And all of a sudden they're, back in it at the perfect moment, in the best form. It'll take some, again, at the end of the day, it's Stevenage, isn't it? They've got far less money and far less deep squad than anybody else around there. You'd expect Huddersfield to be doing better than Stevenage, and you expect them to overhaul them by the end, but there's no reason why they can't.
Obviously got a long trip this midweek to Plymouth, and John, again, Plymouth, what a funny sort of year they've had. Tom Cleverley, kind of sort of difficult period, but they are down in 10th as we speak at the minute. But they've got a shot at getting in there as well, where they kind of would have hoped and expected to be, I guess. But they said that sort of interesting game against Reading, obviously fighting out on Saturday, didn't they? Coming back from coming back from behind twice. This is the period of the year, isn't it, where it's kind of, is get your result, get in the change room, and look at see what everybody else has done, and see how the cards are falling.
Yeah, and I think, from Plymouth's point of view, their away form has been. I think we've spoken about this before. Their away form has been brilliant this season. Home form hasn't quite matched it. They obviously did have that thumping win against Cardiff. But Bim Pepple's scoring a lot of goals for them. Caleb Watts is chipping in as well. A bit unfortunate with the injury to Tolaj, but hopefully he'll be back. Hopefully he'll be back soon. I must haven't heard the latest on him, but they've certainly got some. They've got some firepower there. So it's going to be tough. I think they maybe got just a little bit too much to do there. But just going back to Stevenage as well. I think you've got to say that they are sort of grinding out those wins at the moment, and you've got Carpiziani at the back. There's a really strong player, Charlie Good as well. That going forward, they're probably a team that can sort of win games 1-0. They keep it tight at the back, and when you've got Jamie Reid, he's obviously a very good striker, Northern Ireland international. He's whether it's a penalty or whether it's a goal from open play, he's always liable to score one for you. And Dan Kemp's a very good player as well. He can sort of chip in and be that little creative spark. So they've got sort of some firm foundations and a little bit of a goal threat as well. So yeah, no better time to be just sort of coming back into a little bit of form now.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, we were swapping messages about Bim Pepper on Sunday morning, weren't we? And he's both in our fantasy football team. He doesn't score, so that's sort of our.
He's got about I don't know what his record is over the past 10 games, but it's practically a goal a game, isn't it? If not better.
Game, both stuck him in. Obviously, we can't see who each other's picked. We both stuck him in. I think the other person in our league did as well, and then he goes and gets booked inside the first minute to sort of lose your point.
In fantasy football terms, his sole contribution was to get booked after 35 seconds. So, cheers, Ben.
You had him captain though, at least, so at least you got double points from the.
Yeah, you got both minus points for that.
Yeah. You should do, but yeah, as we say, getting down to the really exciting bit. Obviously, the Football League paper out every Sunday, covering all these brilliant storylines. I know it's early in the week, chaps, but have we got anything in the pipeline so far?
Well, I know Graham. It's Graham Wesley's turn to pen a column for us. So I've spoken to Graham, and I think he does want to talk a little bit this week about Dino Marmaria's exit from Barrow, because obviously Graham worked with Dino for a long time at Stevenage in the past and what have you. I think he wants to talk maybe about the quick fire changes that we get in football these days. So it'd be interesting to see what he's got to say about that. And we've also got Dave Flett's spoken to George Grant at Salford as well about going for promotion with them, and also the influence of their co-owner Paul Scholes on giving them little tips and advice for improving their game as well. So yeah, there'll be plenty there.
And I've done my column on, as I said, on LinkedIn this week. So that's just a lot of the things that you were talking about, looking back at those, the defeats to Carshalton and some of the sort of dark days when they were constantly bombing around, not like mid-table in the National League. And
I don't think they finished in the top half until they won it, did they? I don't know if you come
No, they didn't. They were. I think the highest finish they had was 12th, or maybe 13th, 12th or 13th. So they finished within about 4 places, the same 4 places, about 12th to 15th, 16th for 5 years running, and then finally got out. So yeah, it was just basically 5 years of misery, and then up they went.
Yeah. I wonder if they still got that clock. They've got a clock at one end at Lincoln that sort of ticks down. Like goes from 45 down. I still like.
Did they still do that air raid siren, don't they, as well? When they
did, obviously in
the
non-league days, I was sort of kind of became sort of Lincoln correspondent. I was forever going up and down the A1 to see them, and all their sort of mad exploits in the FA Cup as well. But yeah, they did. Yeah, it was every corner. I think it was every corner. Yeah, air raid siren. Come on.
Brilliant.
I like it.
Obviously, we're all sort of we're confident of being in the championships next season, and they're probably going to shake a few clubs up there, and it'll bring something a bit fresh to the championship. It's nice to see some different teams getting in there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they seem to they're so as we said, they're so well organised. They're happy to let the opposition have the ball, and they can carry on doing that in the Championship probably, and keep being a tough nut to crack, no doubt. But we will see, how do we say, all the results in midweek and at the weekend. Everything will look completely different by Sunday, and that's the beauty of this time of year. So, chaps, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us, John and Chris. We will make sure you pick up the Football League paper on Sunday. Make sure you subscribe to that, and also subscribe to this YouTube channel as well. And we will check in next week and see where we are going into that leading up to that Easter weekend. So thanks for your time, chaps. Appreciate it, and we'll catch you soon.